if I ever, and it doesn't seem possible or likely or even remotely faintly imaginable, but if I ever get professional facilities or semi-professional facilities, I'm going to have a graphic of the pages, the paper turning, and the sound for the title cards because I kind of like that, even though it is thoroughly amateur. I'm Robert McKay. You're watching, of course, Whiskey for Beginners. And everybody does it. I don't like to, but I've sort of gotten the habit of saying that if you like the video, please click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Oh, and the other thing. See, I'm thoroughly amateur. I'm not a professional at this. And if you want to share this video or another video or the whole channel for that matter, please feel free. There are people all over the place all the time who are just getting into whiskey and who, if they're anything like me, want all this information that I'm putting out there in one place. Now, the early videos are really crappy. I understand that, but the information is useful. Today, I want to use almost the last of this bottle and review it. I realized I hadn't reviewed this. It is George Dickel Tennessee Whiskey. It says signature recipe. Now, I would swear that the bottle used to say number 12 on it. And if I look it up on the Total Wine website as George Dickel number 12, this is what comes up. But I don't find the number 12 on here anymore. It just says signature recipe. This is a Tennessee whiskey, and I'm going to have to check and see if I've ever made a video about this. I think I have, but I think maybe I haven't, if that makes sense. But as far as I'm concerned, looking at everything I know, Tennessee whiskey is a variety of bourbon, as wheated bourbon is a variety of bourbon, as four-grain bourbon is a variety of bourbon. Now, briefly, why do I say that? Well, George Dickel is part of it, and I'll just go into that. They distill the same mash bill, put it through the same Lincoln County process, put it in the same barrels in the same rick houses, but some of those barrels, when they're done aging, don't fit the profile, the taste profile of George Dickel Tennessee whiskey. So they take those barrels, which you'll remember, same mash bill, same Lincoln County process, same rick houses, same aging. They take those barrels that don't fit the profile, bottle them separately, and call it George Dickel bourbon. It's the exact same juice. Therefore, the Lincoln County process does not change something from Tennessee or from bourbon to Tennessee whiskey. It's just what you put on the label. And I can't remember the name or the date, anything like that. But it turns out there was a Jack Daniels master distiller. Jack Daniels is the largest Tennessee whiskey producer in the world. And of course, all Tennessee whiskey producers are in Tennessee. But this Jack Daniels master distiller once said that the difference between bourbon and Tennessee whiskey is we call this Tennessee whiskey. It's marketing, it's a name. But whatever you think of that, I want to review this whiskey today. A Glencairn, not Glencairn. It is not Glencairn. It is not a couple named Glenn and Karen. The second syllable is Cairn. One syllable, Cairn. But be that as it may, I'm not going to pour all of it. I don't have a lot of all of it to pour, but I'm just doing a review, so I'll just pour a little bit. I don't know if you can see, that's how much. I'll give you a better shot later. This is from the Cascade Hollow Distillery, which George Dickel, if I remember right, founded in Tullahoma, Tennessee. And among other things, it says it's finest quality sipping here on the side of the label. And over here, there's a silhouette of Tennessee, says, come for the moonlight, stay for the whiskey. George would want you to. Maybe so, I don't know. But it's a nice old-timey label. I don't know when they designed it. I don't know when they, or if ever they've changed it. I know Mellow Corn, which is a corn whiskey from Heaven Hill, they've been using the same label with only minor alterations as the Tax and Trade Bureau required them. They've been using the same label since 1945. So who knows about this? But this is 90 proof whiskey, which if you think in terms of alcohol by volume is 45%. So not quite half alcohol. And I've done a full review of this on Distiller. That's DISTILLER.com. And you can find the mash bill and everything else, all the big details there. For these video reviews, I don't go into all that fuss and bother. And this has a signature for me, a signature note on the nose, pecans. Now, you'll see, mercy, I know exactly what I'm trying to say, and my mouth won't work. You'll see written and hear video reviews where people say that they get Flintstone vitamins from this. I get pecans. To me, that's the signature George Dickel note. Even on their bourbon, which was absolutely horrible. No wonder they don't want to bottle it in their main line. Even on that, I got pecans. By the way, I said I do want to show you the color a little bit. The trouble with being a thoroughly amateur deal, I record on a webcam on my laptop, but it's way over there. I can't even come close to reaching it. Being 45 or being 90 proof, it's not too viscous. The legs are running already. There's pecans, vanilla, alcohol, of course. I put my nose in it a little bit that time. There's kind of a grassy, musty note. Something herbal. That's probably the rye in the mash bill. I don't know what the rye percentage is. As I said, I didn't do that research. But from that note, it might be a fairly high rye mash bill. As a general rule, high rye is about 18 or 20% or more. Rye adds flavor, but rye provides very distinct flavors, and if you get too much rye, it'll overpower the corn and whatever else you have in there. You get a real rye whiskey, and there might be corn in there, there might be barley, there might be something else, but even what they call a barely legal rye, 51% rye, is very distinctive. From Knob Creek, if I remember right, their rye is barely legal. Now, you can get Bullet, which is 95% rye and 5% sprouted barley, and really see what rye is like. Or Sagamore Spirit, I believe, is a 95.5 mash bill. But I believe there's rye in this. Getting some kind of fruit, bananas maybe. There might be bananas and citrus in there. It doesn't smell like it, but it makes me think of ambrosia. Now, I have a chantilly cake in the refrigerator, the last piece of it, and that's a southern invention. It's a white cake, but it has fruit inside it, and on top in this really wonderful buttercream icing. And ambrosia is a southern dessert, too. It's kind of a fruit salad, except with whipped cream, I believe it is. I'm not a cook, so all I know about southern cooking is how to eat it. It's definitely, though, heavy on the pecans and the vanilla on the nose. And if I was doing the full formal review, I'd be willing to spend 15 minutes picking the nose apart and getting everything out of it. But while I don't mind watching a 30-minute review of a single glass of whiskey, a lot of people don't, so let me move on. I'm already over 10 minutes. Again, right off, there's vanilla. There's some spice in there. I can't be sure what spice. Maybe cinnamon, maybe some kind of pepper. There's a little bit of a citrus in there, and some oak as I move it around in my mouth. But that was the first sip, and generally I don't get everything there is on the first sip. Well, there the vanilla was slightly different. It was still vanilla. People talk about French vanilla and vanilla bean and vanilla and all this, and to me, it's vanilla. You know, I'm about as sophisticated as an axe between the eyes. I have about as much subtlety as an elephant stomping on your toes. But the vanilla was a little different. The fruitiness was a little more pronounced. There was some banana in there. The spice is still there, and it's got a nice mouthfeel for 90 proof. And 90, excuse me, 90 proof really is about the lower limit of what I like anymore. I'm sorry, you can hear my voice just suddenly got raspy. And I don't know why that happens. It out of nowhere it'll happen. Sometimes I'll talk to my wife before I go to work, not a problem. I get in the car, start singing along to the radio, and my voice is all clotted. And don't ask me, it didn't used to be that way. I know it's not because I'm getting old, because I'm only 64. Sheesh, that ain't old. My grandmother lived to be 83, almost 20 years older than I am now. And I know very little about any of my family, but I'm not old, so that's not it. But it does have a fairly nice mouthfeel for 90 proof. I wouldn't call it creamy or silky or anything like that, but it's a nice smooth mouthfeel. And that's the only place I've ever found dealing with whiskey where the word smooth comes to mind. It's in the mouth feel, how it feels in your mouth. And I've seen different explanations of what people say when they say this whiskey's smooth. And all I can make out is that what smooth means is I like it. Well, if that's what you mean, then say that. Say what you mean. That fruit was more prominent on that third sip, and I'm getting some nice oak and pecan on the finish, by the way. But on that third sip, the fruit was much more prominent. It was kind of a light citrus, maybe mandarin orange, but without the heaviness to the taste, if that makes any sense. It was if you took canned mandarin oranges and sort of thinned out the flavor until it was just a nice, soft, light coating. And I hope you can understand what I mean by that. Whiskey tasting is very subjective, And sometimes it's difficult to describe what you're experiencing in a comprehensible way. And sometimes a whiskey will make you think of something that another person has absolutely no frame of reference for. For instance, Lineage, which is a 100% barley whiskey from Balcones Distilling, it makes me think of eating chocolate covered tropical fruit while sitting in a sunlit meadow in the morning. Now, there are people who have never had any kind of tropical fruit, who have never had any chocolate covered fruit, who have never seen a meadow, much less sunlit in the morning. And to them, that won't mean anything. But that's what the whiskey is like for me. And so if you don't understand what I'm saying about the citrus note there, I apologize. I don't know a better and clearer way to say it. But this is pretty good stuff. It's not the best whiskey on earth. I can't afford. Let me rephrase that. I can't afford the most expensive and allegedly best whiskey on earth. I have had samples of various things that I could never afford in a million years. And of all those samples from 2 or 3 different people, it's probably a dozen samples or more. Only one has really stood out, and that's Blanton's straight from the barrel. One of those samples was the regular Blanton's, the one everybody pops into the liquor store, says, "You got any Blanton's?" "No." "Bye." Like it's the holy grail or something. I've had that in a sample. Big, fat, hairy deal. I have other bottles that are I think are just as good, but this Knob Creek store pick I have is better than Blanton's. Being a store pick, it is limited quantity, but it's only $56, and as long as supplies last, it'll be on the shelf. That's my third bottle of it. It's better than Blanton's, in my judgment. But anyway, this is not the best whiskey on earth. It's certainly not the most expensive. This bottle was $23.99 at Total Wine. And it's good whiskey. If you're on a budget or if you're just a beginner, you can't go wrong with that George Dickel signature recipe, number 12, whatever it is. But this has gone on considerably longer than I ever intended, so doopshida.